Okay, hello everybody. So, in this video, we need to make the actual collar that goes with the collar stand. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and trace our collar stand onto another piece of paper and take the seam allowances off. So this is the one I have with the seam allowances on it. Trace that same one, take the seam allowances off, draw your center front on the piece of paper that goes through your collar, which is this here. And also, I didn't tell you to do this in your other video, but on the buttonhole that we made, you can punch little holes through the beginning and the end of the buttonhole. That way you can transfer it onto other pieces of fabric and pieces of paper. And then also punch a hole through the center front where it runs through the buttonhole, and you can mark an X through it. That's where your button will go. Okay, so once you have that, then the next thing we're going to do is start to make your collar pattern. Now, to take a second and compare this, this is a collar pattern that I have from a store-bought pattern. You can tell this is a store-bought pattern paper. And then I traced it onto regular pattern paper behind it. Then I also have this really interesting little collar point holder pattern behind it. But anyway, so on this, we're going to take this, and this is the collar stand that came with the pattern, and we're going to kind of look at it to help us get an idea of how to develop our collar, because we are going to make a collar that looks just like this. Now, an easy way to do that could obviously be for me to go here like this and just to like subtract where I don't need some of it, and then that would be the simple thing to do. So I could really just trace this collar verbatim and just take this much off of the back of it, and I would be done. But that didn't help us learn anything about the actual construction of the collar itself. So we're going to look at the comparison of the collars, and we'll go from there. Now, looking at the way this collar is made, first of all, this collar kind of dips a little bit. So it goes from here, and it actually gets a little wider around the center front, and you can see the way it's shaped. And then it dips down like this. So it kind of does like this shape. Okay? I'll show you that shape on here. So the collar kind of makes that shape. Now, ours doesn't do that. Ours just goes in a nice even arc like that. Okay? Now, we're not going to really let that part bother us or change the way that we make this pattern. But it's important to note any differences that you see. Now, okay. So if we take this, and this is a men's collar pattern. But anyway, so we'll take this and we'll look at it. So if we start with both of these center backs together, we can see that the collar matches into a certain point, because this is how they make the collar patterns. And if you look, let me show you this. This is in a pattern making book. So this is how they make the collar pattern. They take the collar stand, and then they draft the collar pattern off of the stand, and then they mark slashes in it, and then they open it. So in order to do that with ours, what we're going to do is compare these collar patterns to see where they spreaded it first of all, and then we'll mark where we need to spread it, and then we'll mark how much we need to spread it, and we'll find that out. Okay, so the first thing, when we match these up, you can see they match until about here. So we can measure that. So you can see it's about here, and I'm going to mark that with my pencil. Now if you have a collar pattern, you can do this, but if you want, you can just watch me. So let's see, 2 1/8 inches. So I'll come over here to my collar pattern and I will record that. And I will measure 2 1/8 inches. Now, because this pattern over here is a little bigger than mine or a little longer than mine, I'm going to not do it at 2 1/8, and I'll do it at 2 inches. And that way I'll just say that that's going to take out the little amount that it is big. Okay. So we did that. We measured it to there. And then I'm going to stick my finger down and I'm going to pivot it till the collar is even again. So the collar is even with the collar stand. Go back. Here's that. Okay. Okay, so once again it gets uneven right about here, and I already have a little mark here. I don't know what I was using that mark for originally, but anyway, this is actually the first time I've done this like this. So let's see, we'll measure that. Two and a half inches is the next spot where it moves. So we'll measure here on our pattern, 2 1/2 inches. Okay. So yeah, 2 inches, then 2 1/2 inches. So we did the first one. And if you may not be sure where I'm putting my finger in order to hold it down. I'm not just putting it anywhere. I'm putting it at about where the seam line would be. Okay. So the same thing when I move again, I'm putting my finger down about where the seam line would be. And you pivot it there. Okay, and we have one more place where it changes. So I'm going to say about there. And measure this. This is another 2 inches up or down the collar. So yeah, 2 inches. Okay. Now what these are going to become our slash lines. So we can get the angle that this collar has on it. And then from there it matches with the center front. Okay. Now, with that moved out of the way, we can look here. So we should have 3 marks. We're not counting the notch here, so ignore your notch if you have one there. So we should have 1, 2, 3 marks. That's where our collar is going to be split and spread. Now, looking at this, if we match it up at the center front notch and then make it so that it's kind of even here. So basically there's no spreading that was going on here. Everything is matching up perfectly. Then we can see about exactly how we need to draw our angle. Now an even better way to do that would be if I took my collar pattern here and I folded it right on that center front notch, which for this will also be on the seam allowance, because the seam allowance lands right on the center front. Because when you sew up your collar pattern and the seam allowance is sewn up, it's supposed to match right here at your center front. Because your actual collar should not go past center front, because center front is where your collar stand joins together. So if it's going past center front, you got a collar that's overlapping. Okay. So anyway, looking at this, and we can see. Now I need to go in and find out exactly where my center front is. So luckily I still have this pattern attached to the back, and I can go right here and notch my center front. So I can flip this back over.